My CEO fiancée never would have dreamed that today of. All days was supposed to be our wedding day, but when she arrived at the venue, the ballroom was already completely empty, leaving only her family, their faces grim, and I was already on my way back to the office. My assistant Brian sat in the passenger seat, his fingers flying across a tablet as he reported to me in a steady voice. I have spoken with the bank. Mr. Wallace confirmed he'll freeze Vanguard tax loan approval immediately, and Mr. Davis at Innovatech has agreed to absorb Vanguard's client portfolio on our terms. I leaned back in my seat, a mix of melancholy and regret washing over me. For 5 years, I was the one who had built Chloe up from her first fumbling steps as an entrepreneur to her company Vanguard Tech, becoming a known name in the industry. I had watched her every move, growing accustomed to silently clearing obstacles whenever she was overwhelmed. She was stubborn and fiercely independent, always trying to prove she didn't need anyone's protection. That's why I never told her how many of the deals she thought she'd landed through luck, or actually paths I had secretly paved for her, or how many of the regulatory windfalls she thought she'd lucked into were the result of connections I had leveraged beforehand. But none of that mattered. I never wanted her gratitude. All I wanted was that defiant spark in her eyes when she stood beside me, and that occasional moment of dependence when she reluctantly asked, "Ethan, I need a favor." And now she was finally going to be my wife. In the mirror, my expression remained calm, but my heart was beating a little faster than usual. Ryan appeared silently behind me and handed me a file. "Sir, the final confirmation of the wedding itinerary." I glanced at it and nodded. The ceremony was in 30 minutes, and all the guests had arrived. Chloe should have been in her wedding dress by now, waiting in her dressing room. "Is she ready?" "Miss Chloe's hair and makeup were done 20 minutes ago." Brian paused, then added, "However, she seems a little agitated." I raised an eyebrow. "Why, her assistant, Kayla, hasn't arrived." Kayla. The name made my fingers pause for a fraction of a second. Chloe's personal assistant, a young man of mediocre talent whom she valued far too much. He'd been with the company for less than a year, but was already involved in core projects. Chloe had even insisted he be in charge of the wedding rings and important documents for today, all because he looked like her deceased first love. She never said it out loud, but I knew the reason better than anyone. "Traffic?" I asked, my tone flat. "Unclear," Ryan said, his eyes downcast. "Miss Chloe has called him twice. He just says he's on his way." I checked the time, said nothing more, and walked toward her dressing room. When I pushed the door open, Chloe was standing by the window with her back to me. The train of her gown fanned out across the floor. She heard me enter and spun around. Her makeup was flawless, her features perfectly defined, her lips a vibrant red against her pale skin. But her expression held a rare panic, and her fingers were clenched tightly around her phone. "Ethan." She rushed toward me, her heels sinking into the plush carpet. "Caleb isn't here yet." I placed my hands on her shoulders to steady her. "Calm down. What's going on?" "He said he's stuck in traffic on the I-95, that he'll be at least another hour." Her voice trembled. "The rings are with him. So is the final version of the addendum for the investors. The USB drive for the ceremony. Everything." I narrowed my eyes. "A traffic jam on the interstate at this hour. Tell him to give everything to a courier, or just give us his location. I'll send someone to pick it up," I said calmly. "The wedding won't be delayed." "No," she shot back instantly, her fingers instinctively tightening on my sleeve. "That stuff is too important to be handed off to a stranger. Besides, he's my assistant. He's stranded out there. How can I just ignore it? Let's just postpone the wedding for an hour. Please." Her eyes darted away for a second, a flicker of guilt quickly masked by stubbornness. I watched her in silence. She knew exactly how important today was. Our top global partners, the most influential figures in the industry, even a few of the old guard from APX Corporation, they were all seated out there, waiting to witness the ceremony. And she wanted to postpone it all for an assistant. "Chloe," I began slowly, my voice quiet, but each word sharp. "Think very carefully about what it means. If you walk out that door right now." Her lashes fluttered, but she didn't back down. "It's just 1 hour. The guests will understand." "Understand?" I chuckled softly, cupping her jaw. The pressure was gentle, but she flinched. "Are you suggesting that the time of everyone here, myself included, is less important than one late assistant?" The color drained from her face. That's not what I meant. But Caleb is. He's what? I cut her off, my expression turning to ice. Is he more important than your wedding? More important than every single person out there? More important than me? I practically ground out the last question through my teeth. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but instead, bit her lip and stubbornly turned away. Ethan, you're overreacting. It's only an hour. When I get back, everything will proceed as planned. With that, she snatched her car keys from the table and stormed out, dragging the wedding gown behind her. I stood perfectly still. I didn't stop her. This was her choice. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. The dressing room fell deathly silent. I looked down at the wedding band on my finger, and then slowly, I slid it off. The door to the dressing room closed behind me, silencing the sound of Chloe's retreat. I stood in the shadows of the corridor, my thumb mindlessly tracing the edge of the ring in my hand. The platinum edge dug into my skin, a faint, sharp pain that served as a clear reminder of how absurd this all was. For an assistant, a useless subordinate who couldn't even show up on time. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, the last trace of warmth was gone. At the end of the hall, Ryan appeared. His gaze fell to my bare ring finger, his expression flickering for a moment. But he said nothing. Sir, the ceremony is scheduled to begin in 20 minutes, he reminded me quietly. I acknowledged him with a hum and started toward the main ballroom. The moment I pushed open the doors to the ballroom, a wave of chatter and laughter washed over me. The light from the crystal chandeliers was blinding. The fractured reflections from the champagne are making my eyes ache. The room was filled with elegantly dressed guests wearing practiced smiles, as if everyone was drowning in a sea of false joy. How ironic. I moved through the crowd without expression, making my way to the stage. My steps were steady, even leisurely, but the noise around me began to die down as curious and questioning gazes turned in my direction. Why is Ethan by himself? Where's the bride? Did something happen? The whisper spread through the room like a rising tide. I ignored them, walked directly onto the stage, and took the microphone. Everyone. The sound system amplified my voice, carrying it clearly to every corner of the hall. The last few murmurs of conversation died instantly. The room was silent. All eyes were on me. I calmly scanned the crowd below and began to speak. I apologize for interrupting what should be a joyous occasion. Something unfortunate has just occurred. I paused for a beat. My tone is cool, as if I were stating a simple fact. The bride, Miss Chloe, has determined that the inability of her personal assistant, Mr. Caleb, to arrive on time, is a matter more important and more urgent than the wedding ceremony we have spent months preparing, more important than the goodwill of all of you who have traveled so far to be here, and more important than the feelings of her future husband. Therefore, she has decided to drive to the interstate herself to retrieve him. The moment I finished, an uproar erupted from the crowd. There were gasps, wide-eyed stares of disbelief, and more than a few people were already pulling out their phones to record. I could already imagine tomorrow's headlines in the business journals and gossip columns. Breaking: bride abandons groom at the altar for male assistant. Vanguard Tech CEO calls off wedding for her assistant. A small smile touched my lips, but my eyes were ice. Based on Miss Chloe's clear choice and her priorities, I continued, my voice even, silencing the room once more. This wedding has lost its meaning and its foundation. Therefore, Ethan, am officially announcing the wedding schedule for today is permanently cancelled. The word cancelled landed like a thunderclap. The crowd below erupted. Gasps, murmurs, and the sound of camera shutters filled the air. People stood up trying to ask questions. Some even tried to approach the stage. The scene was chaos. I ignored it all and gave a slight bow. My assistant, Mr. Ryan, will be handling any and all inconveniences and expenses incurred by our guests today. He will ensure you are all reasonably compensated. Again, my deepest apologies. Please enjoy the rest of your day. The etiquette was perfect, the words polite, but they were more devastating than any shout of rage could have been. After I finished, I set down the microphone and walked off the stage. A server stood nearby holding a tray of champagne, a look of shock still frozen on his face. I stopped and opened my palm. The wedding band lay there, gleaming coldly, without a moment's hesitation. I let it drop. A soft clink. The sound was sharp and clear. The ring traced a silver arc through the air before landing, perfectly in a champagne flute on the server's tray. The golden liquid sloshed, and the ring sank slowly to the bottom, a silent burial. The entire room went dead silent. I walked toward the side exit without a backward glance. Ryan materialized at my side like a phantom. "The car's ready, sir," he murmured. I nodded, not breaking my stride. Behind me, the ballroom erupted once more. I could faintly hear raised voices, people making calls, and others already rushing for the doors, likely to chase after Chloe or the story. But none of it had anything to do with me anymore. The moment I pushed open the side door, a cold wind hit my face. The sky was overcast, the clouds hanging low and heavy, threatening a downpour. Ryan fell into step beside me. "What's next?" I pulled open the car door, my voice chillingly calm. "Initiate the contingency plan. I want her to know exactly what she's lost." The wind howled along the highway. Chloe gripped the steering wheel. Her, Meckles white, the voluminous skirt of her wedding dress, was bunched up in the passenger seat. Just then, her phone rang. It was her best friend, Lily, her voice choked with tears. "Chloe, you have to come back. Ethan. He canceled the wedding." He announced it in front of everyone. Chloe slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the pavement. What her voice was a shriek that didn't sound like her own. "He told everyone that you decided Caleb was more important than the wedding, more important than the guests, more important than him. So he announced it was canceled. And he threw your wedding ring into a glass of champagne." Chloe's mind went completely blank. A buzzing filled her ears. Lily was still talking, but she couldn't process a single word. Canceled the wedding, just because she was going to be an hour late. How could Ethan do that? She hung up, her trembling fingers fumbling to dial Ethan's number. "The number you have dialed is not available at this time." She tried again, only to be met with the same cold, robotic voice. She started sending frantic messages. "Ethan, are you insane? You're canceling the wedding because I'm running an hour late. How can you be so cruel, so unreasonable? Answer your phone." The messages went unanswered. Panic and rage washed over her in a tidal wave, drowning her reason. She slammed her fist on the steering wheel and the horn blared. The car behind her honked impatiently, and she realized she was stopped in the middle of a lane. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. First, find Kayla. Get the rings and the documents. And then what? Then what? Go back and marry Ethan. Or just have a massive fight with him. She didn't know. All she could do now was hit the gas and keep driving. That Ethan. Just wait until I get Caleb and come back. He was going to regret this. The scenery blurred past her window as the dark clouds hung lower in the sky. Ryan sat in the passenger seat, his fingers gliding across the tablet, his voice steady as he delivered his report. "I've spoken with the bank. Mr. Wallace confirmed he'll freeze Vanguard tax loan approval immediately. And Mr. Davis at Innovatech has agreed to absorb Vanguard's client portfolio on our terms." I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes, my fingertips tapping a silent rhythm on my knee. Caleb. The man we have on him just sent an update," Ryan said, a subtle note of derision in his voice. "He never even got on the interstate. He's at a 7-Eleven right now, scrolling through his phone." I slowly opened my eyes. Just as I thought. A pathetic subordinate who couldn't even tell a convincing lie. "Send his location to Chloe," I said flatly. "Let her see for herself what she threw her wedding away for." Ryan nodded, tapped the screen a few times, and sent the message. The atmosphere in the car was silent and heavy. Rain began to spatter against the windows. First a few drops, then a steady downpour. I stared out at the blurred landscape, my thoughts perfectly clear. Chloe would have heard about the cancellation by now. She would be furious, confused. She would call and text me hysterically, but she would never get a response. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen, which was flooded with a stream of unread messages. "Ethan, are you insane? You're canceling our wedding because I'm running an hour late. How could you be so cruel? Answer the phone. We need to talk. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" The last one had come in 5 minutes ago. "You just wait. I'm on my way back." I locked the screen without expression and tossed the phone aside. Too late. The glass door of the 7-Eleven was thrown open, slamming against the wall with a loud bang. Chloe stood in the doorway, the hem of her wedding dress soaked and clinging to her legs, the fabric cold against her skin. Her wet hair was plastered to her face. Her makeup was running, and she was a complete wreck. The few other customers in the store looked up at her, startled. In a corner, Caleb was lounging with his legs crossed, playing on his phone, a half-finished coffee at his elbow. His hair was a mess, He had dark circles under his eyes. And he reeked of stale alcohol and cheap cologne. He didn't look like someone who had been stuck in traffic. The blood froze in Chloe's veins. Kyla. Her voice was ice. Caleb's head snapped up the moment he saw her. The color drained from his face. He scrambled to his feet, dropping his phone with a clatter. Sage Chloe. What are you doing here? He stammered, his eyes darting nervously. I was just about to call a car. The traffic was insane. So I just stopped here for a minute to rest. Chloe stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Lies, all of it. For this lie, she had abandoned her wedding, abandoned Ethan, abandoned all of her guests. And now, this useless subordinate stood before her, disheveled and spewing nonsense. Get in the car, she said through gritted teeth, then turned and walked away. Caleb frantically grabbed his bag and hurried after her. Chloe, let me explain. I really didn't mean it. I had a client dinner last night. I drank too much and overslept. I was afraid you'd be mad. So Chloe spun around, her glare like a knife. Shut up. Caleb fell silent instantly. The atmosphere in the car on the way back was suffocating. Chloe gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles bone white. The rain was coming down harder now, and the wipers, even at their highest speed, could barely keep the windshield clear. Just then, her phone began to vibrate uncontrollably. Caleb in the passenger seat fumbled to hand it to her. Chloe. It's a call. Chloe glanced at the screen. It was Mark. Her VP, she answered. And before she could say a word, Mark's panicked voice came through the speaker. Chloe. Huh. And that's bad. The bank just called our $30 million bridge loan. It's been frozen. They cited concerns about company stability. What are we going to do about the $8 million? Heimat we owe Source Electronics tomorrow. Chloe's breath hitched. When it gets worse, Mark said, his voice cracking. I just got an email from Innovatech Solutions. They're unilaterally terminating all of our contracts. They're our biggest client. The world started to go dark at the edges of Chloe's vision. Innovatech Solutions. They were the client Vanguard Tech depended on, accounting for 70% of the company's revenue. She fumbled to hang up and opened her email app. Sure enough, there was an email from Innovatech at the top of her inbox. To Vanguard Tech. Following a review, we have identified significant uncertainties in your company's recent management, which prevent us from guaranteeing supply chain stability and future support. This serves as formal notification that all agreements between our companies are terminated, effective immediately. No, this can't be happening, she muttered, her trembling fingers scrolling down the screen. An iMessage voice note started playing automatically. Chloe, I heard there was a situation at the wedding. It was one of her investors. His voice cold and distant. We're very concerned about the stability of the company. We'll need to reassess the risk before moving forward. The signing next week is on hold indefinitely. The phone slipped from her hand and fell onto the seat. Chloe's mind went blank. The loan denied. Her biggest client gone. The investment deal canceled. It all happened fast. Too perfectly. Like a carefully orchestrated attack. And there was only one person who could orchestrate something like this so quickly. Ethan. That bastard. He had to blow such a small thing completely out of proportion. Look at the trouble he's caused me. Her hand shaking, she snatched up her phone and instinctively dialed Ethan's number. The number you have dialed is not available at this time. The cold, robotic voice was like a bucket of ice water dumped over her head. Undeterred, she used her company landline to call his office at Keystone Capital. This time it went through. Keystone Capital. Ryan answered, his voice polite but distant. Ryan, it's Chloe. I need to speak to Ethan. It's an emergency. Her voice was shrill. There was a second of silence on the other end. I'm sorry, Miss Chloe. Ryan's voice was chillingly calm. Mr. Ethan is not taking any calls at the moment, especially not from Vanguard Tech. You goodbye. The line went dead. The dial tone buzzed in her ear. Chloe sat frozen, her hands on the steering wheel trembling uncontrollably. Ethan had blocked her, not just her personal number. He had cut off every possible way she could reach him. The realization plunged her into an icy abyss. Chloe, is something wrong? Caleb asked tentatively. Chloe whipped her head around to look at him, and the raw despair and fury in her eyes made him recoil. The wedding is canceled, she said, enunciating every word, because you were late. The expression on Caleb's face changed instantly. What canceled? He squawked. his voice high with theatrical disbelief. Just because I was an hour late. Ethan is being so petty. Chloe, you can't blame me for this. Who knew he couldn't take a joke? That he'd disrespect you like that? He kept rambling, his tone so casual. It was as if they were discussing a minor inconvenience. The company is about to go under. Chloe cut him off, her voice hoarse. The loan is gone. Our biggest client is gone. The investors are gone. All because of Ethan. Caleb stared for a second, then waved a dismissive hand. Hey, don't worry about it. It's probably just a misunderstanding. Ethan's just blowing off steam. You can smooth it over. Besides, with your talent, you can handle this. His tone was infuriatingly casual, and she could detect a hint of satisfaction in it. Chloe stared at him. That face, the one that looked so much like her first love, Jason, now seemed alien and ugly. She suddenly realized the magnitude of her mistake. For this useless person, what had she lost? Get out, she said coldly. Caleb froze. When I said get out, she slammed on the brakes, and the tires screeched on the wet pavement. Caleb lurched forward, nearly hitting the windshield. Are you crazy? We're on the interstate. Get out now. Her voice was a piercing shriek, and the vicious look in her eyes made Caleb snap his mouth shut. He sullenly grabbed his bat, pushed open the door and muttered under his breath, psycho. Screws up her own life and then blames me. The door slammed shut. Chloe stomped on the accelerator. The car shot forward, splashing a wave of muddy water all over Caleb. In her rearview mirror, she saw him jumping up and down, cursing in the rain, his figure shrinking until it vanished into the downpour. She finally broke, slumped over the steering wheel and bursting into tears. It was all over. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Apex Corporation boardroom, the rain was coming down in sheets. I stood by the window, holding a report that detailed the complete collapse of Vanguard Tech over the last 72 hours. Loans recalled, contracts terminated, supply chains severed. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Ryan stood behind me, his voice calm. Laura and David signed their employment contracts. They officially joined the APEXAI Research Institute this morning. As you instructed, we doubled their salaries and their project autonomy. I gave a slight nod. Poaching Chloe's core team was the killing blow. Without Herky engineers, Vanguard Tech wouldn't be able to fulfill even its most basic orders. What about the IRS? They've already flagged 3 problematic contracts that Caleb handled. Ryan said, a cold smirk playing on his lips. One is a procurement agreement for smart home modules. The counterpart was a shell corporation with a suspicious cash flow. Additionally, his expense reports from last month are full of personal charges. I turned and tossed the report on the table. Send it to the second anonymously. Already done, Ryan said, adjusting his glasses. Also, Caleb met with the VP of Intel Shared Tech last night at a Blue Bottle Coffee. My fingers tapped lightly on the desk. Were we recording? Everything is in place. I gazed out the window. The city was a blur through the curtain of rain, much like Chloe's current situation. She likely had no idea that the storm was only just beginning. The Vanguard Tech office was dead quiet. When Chloe pushed open the glass doors, a few employees who had been whispering together immediately fell silent, scurrying back to their desks and avoiding her eyes. A strange silence hung in the air, as if everyone could feel the walls closing in, just waiting for the final blow. The sound of her heels on the marble floor was jarringly loud. Before her office door could even close, Mark burst in. Chloe, it's terrible. Laura and the team. He didn't need to finish. 3 resignation letters were already on her desk. Laura, her head of engineering, stood in front, her expression a mixture of regret and resolve. Chloe, I'm sorry. The new AI Research Institute at APEX Corporation made us an offer we couldn't refuse. Chloe's nails dug into her palms. Apex, the name, one she'd never heard before, felt like poison in her ears. Double the salary, complete project autonomy, Laura said with a wry smile, and absolute stability. We know leaving now is a low blow, but you have to look out for yourself, David added, staring at the floor. The room began to spin. These 3 were the technical core of her company. Without them, Vanguard Tech was paralyzed. She managed to sign their papers with a shred of dignity. The moment they were gone, her CFO burst in, his face ashen. Chloe, of course, Circe Electronics has cut off our supply. The production line is down, and all our other vendors are demanding immediate payment. He was followed by the head of HR, The bank was just here. They're calling in our first loan. We have 3 days to pay. Finally, the receptionist called on the intercom. Chloe, there are agents here from the IRS and the SEC. They say it's a surprise audit. Chloe collapsed into her chair, feeling her world disintegrate around her. The next 3 hours were a nightmare. The IRS agents went straight for the account Caleb had managed. The normally slick assistant was now pale, stammering into the auditor's sharp questions. That might have been an accounting oversight. Chloe was the one who introduced me to that supplier. The travel expenses. I think I might have submitted the wrong receipts. Chloe watched his pathetic performance, her stomach churning. The agents ultimately zeroed in on 3 problematic contracts and nearly $100,000 in fraudulent expenses. As they left, the lead agent looked at her and said pointedly, Miss Chloe, your company has some very serious financial management issues. The second they were gone, Chloe dragged Caleb into her office. What have you been doing behind my back? Caleb's eyes shifted nervously. Chloe, listen. It's all a misunderstanding. Her computer chimed with a new email notification. It was an anonymous email with an audio file and photos attached. The moment Chloe played the recording, Caleb's voice filled the room. Mr. Wallace, Vanguard is really finished this time. Ethan is going to destroy her. I know their main contact at Novatech, and I know the design specs for their next-gen product. If you give me a position, I can get it all for you. Yeah, Chloe. She's just a stupid woman who got played by her first love and then found a stand-in. She deserves everything she gets. The photos showed Caleb shaking hands with the VP of Intel Shear Tech, a folder of what were clearly Vanguard's internal documents sitting on the table between them. The air in the room turned to ice. Chloe slowly raised her head. Caleb's face was sheet white. Chloe, it's fake. Someone's trying to frame me. She grabbed her laptop and hurled it at him. Get out. Caleb dodged it, his expression twisting into a sneer. Stop acting so superior. Once this company goes under, you'll be nothing. He ripped his tie loose, his face contorting with rage. You think Ethan naturally gives a damn about you? He's just playing with you. I'm sick of you looking down on me, treating me like some kind of replacement. He lunged for the laptop. Chloe tried to dodge, but he shoved her to the floor. Caleb snatched the laptop and ran, pausing at the door to spit one last insult. You deserve to go bankrupt. Ethan was right. You're a fool. The door slammed shut behind him. Chloe lay on the floor, trembling. In that moment, it all clicked into place. Apex Corporation. The surgical precision of the attacks. Ethan's warning. She grabbed her coat and ran out the door. The receptionist at Keystone Capital was polite but distant. I'm sorry. Mr. Ethan is not in the office. When will he be back? It's an emergency. Chloe's voice was raw. I'm not sure. She was about to push past when Ryan appeared by the elevators. Miss Chloe. His eyes were cold. Mr. Ethan will not see you. Please leave. Ryan, please. Chloe begged, her voice breaking. Just give me a few minutes within. Security. To uniformed guards immediately. Stepped forward and flanked her, escorting her toward the exit. The moment she was escorted out the front doors, Chloe finally broke. She slid down onto the steps, rain and tears mixing on her face. She remembered the way Ethan used to look at her, with tenderness, with exasperation, with indulgence. And then she remembered the image of his cold, resolute back as he walked away. For a pathetic stand-in. What had she lost? The answer twisted in her gut like a knife. She had lost the only person in the world who had ever truly loved her. From the top floor of the Apex Corporation Tower, the storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean, cold and glittering below. I stood at the window looking down at the river of traffic that flowed like ants below. Ryan's calm voice came through the encrypted comms device in my hand. Project Phoenix is ready to launch. The asset valuation report for Vanguard Tech just came in. Read it. Patented technology valued at $120 million. Client database at $80 million. Lab prototypes at $30 million. But under bankruptcy liquidation, we can acquire it all for 30 cents on the dollar at most. I swirled the whiskey in my glass, the ice cubes clinking softly. Too expensive. Ryan understood immediately. Understood. I'll have the bank supply more pressure. By the time it goes to a court-ordered auction, we can get it for 10 cents on the dollar. Make it happen. I ended the call and turned back to my desk. The latest financial paper was spread across my desk. The front page featured a photo of Chloe collapsed on the steps of the Keystone Capitol building, under the headline From Grace to Disgrace, how the Vanguard Tech CEO's wedding drama triggered a corporate collapse. In the photo, her makeup was smeared and her wedding dress was stained with mud. She looked like a madwoman. I tossed the paper into the trash without a flicker of emotion. The air conditioning in the lawyer's office was blasting. Oh yes, sat stiffly at one end of a long conference table, across from three stone-faced lawyers and two menacing creditors. The table was piled high with thick stacks of paper, each one a blade waiting to deliver the final cut. Miss Chloe, according to the assessment, Vanguard Tech is insolvent, the lead lawyer said, pushing a document across the table. This is the asset transfer agreement. Please review it. Her fingers were trembling too much to hold the pen. Her eyes scanned the blurry text, then froze on the line for the acquiring party. Acquiring party APX Tech LLC, a subsidiary of APEX Corporation. Authorized signatory. Ethan felt like a bomb had gone off in her head. A roar filled her ears. APEX Corporation. The massive conglomerate that's pan-finance, tech and real estate. The corporate empire so powerful that even governments deferred to it. Ethan was part of APEX Corporation. No, that wasn't right. Her eyes were glued to the words authorized signatory. And a far more terrifying realization dawned on her. Ethan wasn't just part of APEX Corporation. He was APEX Corporation. The Ethan who had quietly invested in her company, who had pulled strings to connect her with clients, who had even cooked for her when she was sick, was the unseen ruler of this corporate empire. The memories came flooding back. The time she'd complained about a competitor with powerful backers, only for that same competitor to offer a truce the very next day. The time she'd been scrambling for a loan, only to have the bank suddenly offer her prime rates. Even her most difficult client, Innovatex Solutions, had become miraculously cooperative. After a chance introduction from Ethan, it had never been luck. The man she had pushed away had been silently holding up her entire world all along. Miss Chloe, your signature please, the lawyer prompted impatiently. As the tip of the pen touched the paper, a tear fell, splashing across Ethan's signature. His sharp, decisive signature was like a blade, shredding the last of her pride. The moment she signed, her phone began to buzz frantically. It was her mother, her hysterical sobs piercing through the speaker. Chloe, the retirement community just called. They said they're repossessing the condo. What's going on? You said it was a corporate benefit. Then a text from her bank. Your credit card ending in 818 has been frozen. Then an email from her country club. Dear member, your membership has been terminated. One after another. They came in like a series of perfectly timed death notices, surgically removing every trace of Ethan from her life. When she walked out of the law office, it had started to rain again. Chloe stood in the rain, staring at the news alerts that were flooding her phone. Exclusive. The full story of Wedding Date Bride. Chloe Vanguard Tech's collapse. How the CEO chose her assistant over a billionaire. APEX Corporation acquires Vanguard's core assets in fire sale. Ethan's true identity revealed. The comments section of every article was a cesspool of mockery. She deserves it. What a blind, stupid woman. She threw away a man like Ethan for some boy toy. I heard the assistant took her money and ran. Karma's a bitch. A new text popped up on her screen. It was the last message she would ever receive from Kayla. Don't try to find me. You gave me that money. If you have to blame someone, blame yourself for being so stupid. The rain mixed with her ears. That taste salty and bitter in her mouth. She walked numbly toward the parking garage, only to find her Porsche had a repossession notice on the windshield. The parking attendant told her coldly, the car has been seized as part of the liquidation. She searched her pockets and found only a crumpled $20 bill. She tried to hail a cab, but three empty ones saw her, a draggled appearance, and sped past. A fourth one finally stopped, and the driver eyed her suspiciously. Where to? Chloe opened her mouth, then realized she had nowhere to go. Her company was gone. Her home was gone. And none of her friends were picking up her calls. Finally, she gave him the address of the cheap apartment her parents were renting. Outside the cab window, a massive LED screen was broadcasting a business news segment. Ethan was on the screen, impeccably dressed, standing on a stage at an Apex Corporation product launch, calmly introducing the next generation of smart home technology. It was the system, the core project that Vanguard Tech had never finished. The camera zoomed in on his hands. His ring finger was bare, Chloe finally broke, burying her face in her hands and sobbing. Like a lunatic in the back of the cab, the driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror and quietly locked the doors. The acquisition is complete, Ryan said, placing a file on my desk. All patents and client data have been transferred to a PEX deck. Vanguard's office equipment goes to auction on Monday. I nodded, my eyes falling on the last document in the file. It was the deed for the condo in the retirement community where Chloe's parents live. Take care of it. Yes, sir. Ryan hesitated. Caleb lost everything in a casino in Las Vegas last night. He's in deep with some loan sharks. I swirled a drink in my glass. Take a few photos. Send them to Chloe. Do you want us to let him live? The chill of the glass seeped into my fingertips as I looked out at the darkening sky. Let him live. Sometimes, living is more painful than death. Just like Chloe. She is nothing. She's been abandoned by everyone. And even the lies she told herself have been torn to shreds. That is true punishment. I raised my glass to the glittering city outside my window. And then I drank. The burn of the whiskey in my throat was as satisfying as vengeance long delayed. The lights of the Summit Club cast a golden glow on the rainy night. A private dinner had just concluded. And I was walking toward the entrance, surrounded by a group of international executives. Ryan opened a black umbrella, shielding me from the drizzle. Ethan, regarding the proposal for the Southeast Asian market. I held up a hand, cutting him off. My gaze had fallen on a figure huddled in the shadows at the bottom of the steps. A thin figure was curled up in the rain like a stray dog. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and a faded, threadbare coat was soaked through. Clinging to her frame, she was shivering, her arms wrapped around herself, her lips purple with cold, but her eyes were fixed on the entrance to the club. Chloe. I narrowed my eyes. I hadn't seen her in 3 months. She was so thin. She was almost unrecognizable. Her eyes were sunken, and the once bright, proud light in them had been replaced by a dull, bloodshot haze. Ethan. The moment she saw me, a desperate, feverish light ignited in her dead eyes. Security moved to intercept her, but I stopped them with a small gesture. The gesture was like a signal. Chloe lunged forward, but she tripped on the steps and fell hard into a puddle of water. She ignored the pain and scrambled on, her hands and knees to my feet, her trembling fingers clutching the cuff of my pants. Ethan. I was raw. Her voice was a raw, broken thing, a mixture of rain and tears. I know I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was blind. I was an idiot. I never should have lost my mind and left you for that animal. Caleb. I shouldn't have thrown your love away. I shouldn't have been so arrogant, so entitled. I took everything you did for me for granted. The executives around me silently stepped back, creating a clear space around us. Rain dripped from the edge of my umbrella, splashing in the puddles around her. My company is gone. My money is gone. My home is gone, she said, her head tilted back, her pale throat exposed like a prisoner at the block. Everyone laughs at me. They all say I deserve it. I have nothing left. I only have you. Her grip on my pants tightened, her knuckles turning white. I know I don't deserve you. I know I'm a disgrace. But please, for the sake of the last 5 years, for the fact that I did once truly love you. The last words broke in her throat. She lowered her head until her forehead touched the wet, cold pavement. Please, give me another chance. Even if it's just to be your servant. I'll do anything. Please. This woman, once so impossibly proud, was now groveling at my feet like a beaten dog. Her dignity ground into the dirt. I watched her, and suddenly I felt nothing but boredom. I slowly crouched down, and my gloved hand gripped her chin, forcing her to look up at me. The action caused a tiny flicker of hope to ignite in her eyes. Pathetic. What are you crying about? My voice was soft, but it made her tremble violently. I applied a little pressure, leaving a red mark on her pale skin. Weren't you going to pick up your most important assistant? I emphasized the words most important, and they seemed to twist like a knife in her already broken heart. She opened her mouth, but all that came out was a small, wounded whimper. Where is he now? I leaned in close, my breath warm against her cold ear. Can he cry your company back from bankruptcy? Can he shelter you from the storm that broke her? She went limp, collapsing like a boneless heap, only her fingers still clinging stubbornly to my pants. I stood up and pried her fingers off one by one. The sound of my leather glove against her skin was unnaturally loud in the quiet train. Postpone the wedding for an hour, I said, looking down at her as I pried the last finger away. No, from the moment you chose him. You were out of the game for good. As I turned to leave, she let out a gut-wrenching scream. Ethan, please. The corridor closed, cutting off the sound. The engine of the Rolls-Royce spurred to life. In the rearview mirror, her figure grew smaller and smaller, until it was swallowed by the darkness. Ryan handed me a hot towel. The reporters got it all on camera. Could I wipe the rain from my gloves and suddenly remembered the first time I had met Chloe, 5 years ago. Her first startup had just failed, but she had stood there with her chin held high and said, "Next time, I'll succeed." The sunlight had caught her eyelashes, and they had looked like the wings of a butterfly. Looking back now, it was just an illusion. Back to the office. The window rose, sealing out the night and the rain. Long after the taillights of the luxury car had disappeared, she could taste blood mixing with the rain in her mouth. Chloe didn't know what she had bitten through her lip, or how long she had been kneeling there. A few strangers stood near the entrance of the club, pointing their phones at her, the flashes going off intermittently. Is that her? Chloe, so pathetic, threw away a billionaire for some boy toy. Serves her right. She staggered to her feet. But she had nowhere to go. Her parents' cheap rental apartment. They had disowned her last month. Her friends' places. Ever since the bankruptcy, no one was answering her calls. Her phone vibrated. It was a picture message from an unknown number. The moment she opened it, she felt like she'd been struck by lightning. The photo showed Caleb, his face bloody, kneeling in the corner of a casino, while several large men held him down. The caption read, "Debts must be paid." The last photo was a close-up of his face being shoved onto a poker table. The eyes that had once reminded her of her first love were now filled with nothing but raw, pathetic fear. Her phone slipped from her hand and fell into a puddle with a soft splash. Chloe suddenly started to laugh. The laughter grew louder until it became a hysterical shriek that made the onlookers back away in fear. She's lost her mind. She had. She'd been crazy enough to throw away the one person in the world who truly loved her, all for a piece of garbage. The rain washed down her face, and it was impossible to tell where the tears ended and the rain began. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of sirens, but she knew they weren't coming for her. No one was ever coming for her again. From my office at the top of the Apex Tower, the city lights spread out like a galaxy below. Ryan knocked and entered. "Miss Chloe is downstairs," he said calmly. "She's asking to see you." I didn't look up from the file in my hands. "Tell her to leave. Security has already tried to remove her 3 times. Ryan said, pausing for a moment. "She refuses to go. She says she'll wait as long as it takes." I closed the file and looked out the window. 3 months since that night in the rain. Chloe had completely vanished from my world. Until today. Send her up. I was curious to see what pathetic words she had left to say. The office door opened softly. Chloe stood in the doorway, looking even more worn than the last time I'd seen her. She wore a simple white blouse and black slacks. Her once perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her face was pale and without makeup, revealing the dark circles under her eyes. She was much thinner. Her wrists so slender they looked as if they might break. She looked like a piece of paper that had been wrung dry, pale and fragile. But her eyes were unnerving gly bright, fixed on me as if I were her last hope for survival. "Ethan." Her voice was quiet, trembling slightly. I didn't stand, nor did I offer her a seat. I just looked at her coldly. "What do you want?" My tone seemed to sting her. Her fingers tightened on the hem of her shirt, for a moment before she forced them to relax. She took a deep breath and walked to my desk. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice slow and hoarse. "For the past few months, I've done nothing but regret." I said nothing. Her eyes were red. "But," she fought back the tears, "I was wrong, Ethan. I truly know that I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you for Kayla. I shouldn't have taken everything you did for granted. And I never should have humiliated you at our wedding." Her fingers rested on the edge of my desk, the tips white from the pressure. "Losing you for a piece of garbage was the stupidest thing I had ever done in my life." I let out a cold laugh, and my indifference seemed to wound her, but she pressed on. "I know that nothing I say now can change anything, but I need you to know that you were always the one I loved. Caleb. He was just a substitute for Jason. I couldn't see it clearly. I was so stupid, but I understand now. I only love you." She looked up at me, and the tears finally fell. "I don't want anything else, Ethan. Not the company. Not the reputation. Not the money. I'll give it all up. I just want to be with you. I'll be your maid, your secretary, even your plaything. I don't care. If you're worried, I'll sign any legal document you want. I'll waive any claim to your assets. I don't want anything but you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. A desperate plea. Please. Just give me one more chance. Just one. The office was silent. I looked at her tear-stained face and was struck by the absurdity of it all. The once impossibly proud Chloe was now begging me for scraps of affection. How pathetic. I slowly rose from my chair and walked around the desk to stand in front of her. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hope. I reached out and took her chin in my hand. The pressure was light, but she trembled. Belated affection is worthless, I said softly. Chloe, where was all this before? Her pupils contracted as if she'd been stabbed. I gave you a choice on our wedding day, I said, releasing her and turning to face the window. And you made it. Ethan, she stammered. I know I was wrong. You know you were wrong. So what? I said, my back still to her. Do you think an apology erases everything? I can make it up to you. I can. With what? I cut her off, my voice like ice. My dignity, my trust. The wedding you destroyed. She stood frozen, her face ashen. I turned back to face her, seeing her standing there, looking as if she might collapse. I suddenly felt tired. Leave. Don't make me call security. She didn't move, silent tears streaming down her face. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice a hoarse whisper. Do you really not love me at all anymore? Not a word was a knife in her heart. She staggered, nearly falling. Okay, she wiped hurt ears and forced a smile. That was more painful than a sob. I'm sorry for bothering you. She turned and left, her silhouette as thin and fragile as paper. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there looking out at the glittering city, and I suddenly remembered the first time I had seen her, 5 years ago. The sun had been in her hair, and she had looked at me with her chin held high and said, Ethan, I'm going to make it. There had been a fire in her eyes then. Now that fire was out. The moment the elevator doors closed, Chloe collapsed. She bit her lip, trying to stifle a sob, but the tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Her heart ached with a hollow, cavernous pain, as if a piece of it had been carved out. She finally understood that some mistakes once made can never be fixed. Ethan didn't want her anymore. Not ever again. The elevator reached the ground floor, and the door slid open. She shakily got to her feet and walked out of the building. The night wind was cold, sharp as a knife against her skin. She looked up at the top floor of the Apex Tower, lit up as bright as day. There was no place for her there anymore. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. This time, it was really over. The spotlights at the International Convention Center were hot and blinding. I stood at the podium, the massive screen behind me, displaying the APEX Corporation logo. The audience was filled with representatives from the world's top corporations, and the camera lenses were like black eyes, broadcasting my every word around the globe. The APEX smart home system will officially launch next quarter. My voice boomed through the hall. This system integrates the world's most advanced AI, and its core algorithm is protected by 27 international patents. The camera zoomed in on my right hand. My ring finger was bare. The room erupted in thundering applause. Is it true that the core technology for this system was acquired from the bankrupt Vanguard Tech? A reporter called out. The room went silent. I smiled and let my gaze fall on the reckless reporter. Every technology Apex acquires is done so through legal channels. As for why the previous owner went bankrupt, I paused for effect. Perhaps you should ask them about their management decisions. A ripple of knowing laughter went through the room. Everyone remembered the scandal that had rocked the business world. The bride who abandoned her wedding for her assistant and ended up losing her company. As I stepped off the stage, Ryan handed me a tablet. APEX Tech's stock is up another 7%. I glanced at it, then signed a few documents he had waiting for me. Is the reception ready? Everything is in place. The champagne art glittered under the crystal chandeliers. At the reception, I was speaking with the CEO of a German industrial conglomerate when a woman in an elegant forest green dress approached. Mr. Ethan. A pleasure, she said, raising her glass. A diamond watch glittered discreetly on her wrist. I'm Lauren Vance from Crestview Capital. I nodded in greeting. Lauren Vance, one of the youngest VPs on Wall Street. She had recently returned to the States to start her own fund. She was smart, sharp, with the right amount of ambition in her eyes. I hear Apex is making new moves in Southeast Asia, she said, taking a sip of her champagne, a small smile playing on her lips. Perhaps there's an opportunity for us to collaborate. We had a pleasant conversation. She was articulate. Her insights on the market were sharp and original, and she had a well-honed sense of humor. On the large screen behind the bar, a financial ticker was scrolling. APEX Tech, subsidiary of APEX Corp to launch new smart home platform. After integrating assets from former friend me Vanguard Tech, Ryan appeared at my elbow to quietly remind me of my next engagement. If you'll excuse me, I said, raising my glass to Lauren. She smiled and nodded. I looked forward to it. As I turned away, I caught the flash of a camera from the corner of the room. Paparazzi were always lurking. Tomorrow's headlines would likely speculate about my relationship with Lauren Vance. I didn't care. The heat in her rented room was broken. Chloe huddled under a threadbare blanket she'd bought at a thrift store, her fingers stiff with cold. The 100-square-foot room was cold and damp, with peeling paint on the walls. The window looked out onto a bleak, gray street. The cold light of her laptop screen illuminated the room. It was playing a recording of the International Finance Summit. On the screen, Ethan was impeccably dressed, his every gesture radiating an aura of complete control. The camera zoomed in on his hands. The finger where her ring should have been was bare. Apex will continue to uphold its commitment to innovation and responsibility. Ethan's voice, clear and strong, came from the tiny speakers, sounding as if it were coming from another world. Chloe stared blankly at the screen as silent tears rolled down her cheeks. 3 months ago, she had been the celebrated CEO of a rising tech company. Now she was a clerk at a small firm doing data entry, her salary that barely covered her rent. Her parents refused to take her calls. Her friends had all disappeared, and Caleb had taken the last of her money and fled the country. She'd heard he'd gotten in deep with loan sharks in Las Vegas and had his legs broken. She reached out a trembling finger to touch the screen, and Ethan's image wavered under her touch. How pathetic. She had once possessed the most precious thing in the world, the love of a man who stood at the pinnacle of the corporate world, but had been willing to cook for her with his own hands, and she had thrown it all away for a pathetic substitute. A news alert popped up on her screen. Business magnate Ethan spotted with investment guru Lauren Vance, a new power couple. The photo was of Ethan and Lauren Vance at the reception, raising their glasses to each other. They both looked radiant, a perfect match. Chloe slammed the laptop shut. The tiny room was plunged into darkness. She curled into a ball in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest, and finally began to sob. The sound she had suppressed for so long finally breaking free. It wasn't that Ethan was cruel. It was that she didn't deserve him. The final scene fades. In a rundown room, a woman rambles in the shadows, and on the screen frozen in time is the man, smiling triumphantly in the spotlight. 2 different worlds, destined never to cross again.